In this online presentation, I want to introduce you to research proposal writing. In the time that we're together, you will have a better understanding of how to apply techniques that will help you actually achieve your plan of work so you can successfully write a thesis proposal. We're going to identify the components of a thesis proposal and then identify the components that you need to include specifically in Chapter 1 of your thesis proposal. So let's take a look at the big picture of what we need to do to write a good thesis proposal. The first thing I really want you to understand is that your proposal is a work in progress. You need to explain to your committee members what you plan to study. So you need to provide the purpose and your research questions. Purpose is sometimes also referred to as a scope. You need to also identify how you're actually going to answer your research questions through the methodology. You need to justify the significance of your study. Why is your topic important to study? What will it add to the knowledge already discovered about your particular topic? How is it going to help the professionals and advance the theory that you're going to use in your research? You also need to explain the timeline that you're going to complete your work in and where you might be conducting your work if it's not done online or through content analysis. I have several students that will actually go to farmers markets and conduct research or travel to be able to conduct their research. And so you would have to be able to explain where you plan on actually conducting the work. First thing you need to remember is that you have to clearly establish the purpose of your research. This is basically justifying your plan for your research project. It's going to show you how your project's going to contribute to the existing research about your topic and advance the knowledge. But it's also showing us your understanding of how you're going to conduct that methodology in a time frame that's realistic for a master's thesis. And your audience is going to be your academic advisor and your committee members. So we're not talking about layman people when we're writing our thesis proposal. You're really writing this to academics. Several students can feel very anxious about writing Chapter 1 because you're starting with a clean slate, needing to explain your study. So the first piece of recommendation I can give you is to talk to your academic advisor, your committee chair, about your research. What is it you're interested in studying? Why do you want to study it? How do you want to study it? Then if both of you are in agreement that that is a good topic for your thesis proposal, you need to establish a regular writing schedule. So you need to actually schedule out time on a weekly basis for you to write. That way you can be giving out drafts and getting feedback on your writing and being able to make revisions prior to sending your thesis proposal to your committee for review. One way to do this is to just begin by free writing. We know that this is a draft and it's a work in progress. So you need to just start putting thoughts on the paper and brainstorming everything out and then clearly writing under the headlines and the subheadings what you need to say and feeling fine to go back and edit and talk about what you're doing. I enjoy keeping a small notebook with me about my thoughts on my research project so that as I'm thinking about it, I'm writing about it, I have questions, I can keep that notebook and then I can talk to my academic advisor, my committee chairs, my committee members about those thoughts and questions I have. I also want to make sure that my thesis is coherent and makes sense. While you're writing, you will become very close to your writing and you could easily make grammar errors, or you might be missing topic sentences, or the flow of your information does not exist. So if you record some of your information and then you listen back to it, that might help you understand and hear what you're saying and seeing if there's any flaws in your writing. I also encourage you to write your different parts of your thesis in different computer files. So I would do all of my front matter first with Chapter 1. And then I'll have versions of chapter 2, I'll have versions of chapter 3 with my appendices. I do this because you're going to go through multiple iterations of writing, and while you're waiting on feedback for chapter 1, you can be writing chapter 2. While you're waiting for feedback on chapter 2, you can be writing chapter 3, and you can put it all together in one large document for your thesis committee to review. But if you don't make sure you keep versions of your document, you'll never have all the drafts with the edits and the comments of your committee members, making sure that you're addressing everything properly. I also want to make sure that you start off with some more of the clear-cut sections first. If you know the purpose of your study, the significance of it, your research questions, start with those, then go back to the introduction and think through the content of what is it I need to say to set up my study. Other times I'll tell my students to write out chapter 3 with chapter 1, then go back and really flesh out chapter 2, making sure that everything that you have in your instrument and in the population and the methodology, everything that you need to do is then covered in chapter 2, that you've covered your theory thoroughly and everything has been applied to the different chapters. Just because chapter 2 tends to be the hardest for students to write. However, I tend to write in order of my chapters and kind of going back and forth between them and then getting drafts so I can send them off to committee members when I was a graduate student. Some other advice I have to you is to be prepared for revisions. You are going to get feedback from your committee members and you will need to make that feedback applicable before you submit your thesis proposal to the Institutional Review Board to get approval to work with human subjects, if you are doing a study that involves interacting with human beings. And so that is something that can be challenging because you're getting criticism that is constructive, helping you grow and improve as a researcher and the thought process that needs to go into your studies. So don't take it as an insult, take it as a way to grow and learn from your mentors. I also want you to think that this proposal sets up your entire master's thesis because it's the first 3 chapters of 5 chapters of your thesis. So if you do a really good job writing your first 3 chapters, it's easier to write your chapter 4 and chapter 5 because you have that framework established and you really clearly understand your topic and what you need to do to answer your research questions and to be able to discuss the findings, to draw those conclusions and recommendations for what needs to be done next. I also want you to make sure you remember that it's okay to seek out help. Okay, so sometimes if you struggle with writing, ask colleagues to write together or to share documents and help each other out in the writing process, communicating with each other about the process, because maybe something that you don't quite understand, a colleague would understand, and then you can share ideas and talk about things. It's also really great to just set up times to go and write. That way you're getting the project done efficiently.